On a cold February day in 1957, a grisly discovery was made in a wooded area near Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, that would haunt America for decades. A young boy, no older than 4 or 5, was found abandoned in a cardboard box, wrapped in a blanket, and left to die. The box, which became the boy's final resting place, would serve as a chilling reminder of the anonymous child's tragic fate. Despite extensive investigations, the identity of the boy and the circumstances surrounding his death remain a mystery to this day. The discovery of the boy's body shocked the community. His body had been carefully placed inside a box, and the child had been stripped of his clothing. His hair had been recently cut, and his nails had been clipped. These signs suggested that the boy had not been living in abject poverty, but rather that someone had gone to great lengths to prepare him for whatever fate awaited him. The boy's body showed no signs of immediate trauma, but the cause of death was later determined to be blunt force trauma to the head, most likely inflicted by a heavy object. Whoever had killed the boy had gone to great lengths to conceal his identity and ensure that his body would never be traced back to them. At first, authorities had few clues to go on. The boy's body was not clothed in anything that would help identify him. He wore no clothing that could tie him to a specific region, and no one had come forward to claim him. The boy's face was clean, and his body showed no visible signs of neglect, indicating that he had not been living in a harsh environment. It was as if the boy had been well taken care of in the past, but someone had chosen to discard him like trash once his usefulness had expired. Despite extensive media coverage and public interest in the case, no one came forward with any information about the boy's identity. Authorities had few leads, and the public was left with a haunting question: who was this child, and why had he been left to die so tragically? The investigation into the boy's death began with a detailed examination of the cardboard box and the surrounding area. Forensic experts noted that the box itself was an unusual type of packaging, one that did not match any common shipping boxes in use at the time. This led investigators to believe that the boy had been placed in the box by someone who had access to specialized packaging materials. There were no fingerprints found on the box, and no trace of the boy's identity was uncovered in the immediate vicinity. The only clue to the boy's identity came from the fact that his body had been found with a blanket wrapped around him, and investigators were able to determine that the blanket was a type of material that was often used by certain hospitals and orphanages. This led some to speculate that the boy had been taken from one of these institutions, but no one could say for certain. The blanket, like the rest of the evidence in the case, only raised more questions, leaving investigators with little concrete evidence to pursue. Despite the lack of solid leads, the case continued to capture the public's attention. The media dubbed the boy in the box, and the case quickly became one of the most well-known unsolved murders in American history. Police officers, detectives, and amateur sleuths alike began to theorize about who the boy might have been, and why he had been left to die. Theories ranged from the possibility that the boy had been abandoned by his parents, to the more sinister notion that he had been the victim of a kidnapping or murder plot. But no matter how much the case was investigated, the answers remained frustratingly out of reach. In the years following the discovery of the boy's body, various leads were pursued, but none of them led to a definitive breakthrough. The investigation remained open, but the case seemed to stall with each passing year. The boy in the box's death became a cold case, and the mystery surrounding his identity continued to baffle investigators and haunt the public. In 1960, a major breakthrough in the case came when a woman named Mabel Johnson came forward with a potential lead. She claimed that she had seen a woman at a nearby gas station a few days before the boy was found, and that the woman had been seen with a child who resembled the boy in the box. Johnson's account led investigators to believe that the child may have been from a nearby orphanage, but despite efforts to track down the woman, the lead went cold. Other tips came in over the years, but none of them resulted in a solid lead. One of the most frustrating aspects of the case was the lack of information about the boy's origins. Despite many people claiming to have seen the boy or to have known him, no one could identify him definitively. His face became a symbol of the unknown, a reminder of the many children who have disappeared without a trace. The boy's death raised troubling questions about the nature of family dynamics and the care of children. How could someone do this to an innocent child? And why did no one step forward to claim him? As the years passed, new theories about the boy's identity and the circumstances of his death continued to emerge. Some speculated that he had been the victim of a failed adoption attempt, while others believed that he may have been part of a larger, more organized crime. Yet, despite all the speculation, the boy's true identity remained a mystery. The mystery surrounding the boy in the box was not only a matter of solving a crime, it became a symbol of the larger issue of child abuse and neglect. The case captured the public's imagination because it struck at the heart of one of society's most troubling questions: how could someone harm a child so brutally, and then abandon them so callously? The boy in the box case remains one of the most well-known and heartbreaking unsolved murders in the United States. While the passage of time has dimmed the chances of solving the case, it has not erased the public's interest in finding out who this child was and why he died. The mystery of his death continues to captivate true crime enthusiasts and investigators, as well as the public at large. Who killed the boy in the box? What happened to him that night, and why was he left to die in such an isolated place? As the investigation into the boy in the box case continued, new theories began to emerge, but each one left investigators with more questions than answers. The boy's identity remained a mystery, and the circumstances surrounding his death became more perplexing with each new lead. What was clear, however, was that whoever was responsible for his death had gone to great lengths to conceal his identity, and the boy's tragic fate had far-reaching implications for those investigating the case. One of the earliest theories to emerge was that the boy had been the victim of a botched kidnapping. Some speculated that the child had been taken from his parents, perhaps by a family member or someone with an ulterior motive. But there was no evidence to suggest that the boy had been kidnapped. His clothes were clean, and there were no signs of forced entry at the farm or home where he was found. It seemed unlikely that the boy had been taken against his will, especially considering the fact that he had not been reported missing by any known family members. Yet the idea that the boy had been a victim of kidnapping remained an intriguing possibility. As investigators began to focus more on the circumstances surrounding the discovery of the boy's body, new questions arose. One of the most puzzling aspects of the case was the fact that the boy's body had been found in a remote area, far from any major roads or towns. How had the boy ended up in such an isolated location? Was it possible that he had been abandoned by someone who had wanted to make sure that he would never be found? This raised even more unsettling possibilities. Was the boy's death the result of a deliberate act of violence, or was it an accident? Could someone have intentionally abandoned the boy in a place where he was unlikely to be found? Or had something much darker been at play? Another theory that emerged was the idea that the boy had been the victim of child abuse. Some believed that the boy had been part of a family that had a history of neglect or violence, and that he had been killed as a result of mistreatment. This theory was supported by the fact that the boy's body showed signs of malnutrition and neglect, and some believed that he had been subjected to physical abuse prior to his death. The boy's hair had been recently cut, and there were signs that he had been bathed and cleaned before being placed in the box. These details suggested that someone had gone to great lengths to prepare the boy for his final resting place, making the murder all the more chilling. The possibility that the boy's death was the result of an abusive relationship led investigators to focus on the boy's parents, if they existed. However, there was no immediate evidence linking the boy to any specific family. The absence of any missing person reports for a child of his age only added to the mystery. There was no record of any known parents or guardians who had reported a child going missing around the time of the boy's death. This lack of information about his family made the investigation even more difficult, as investigators were left with no starting point. As the investigation progressed, more theories about the boy's origins emerged. One of the more plausible explanations was that the boy had been abandoned by his mother, who had been unable to care for him or provide a stable home. This theory gained traction when investigators found evidence suggesting that the boy may have been living in an unstable or transient environment. There were reports of sightings of a woman with a child in the area, but none of these reports led to concrete leads. It was as if the boy had been dropped into a world where no one knew him, and no one cared enough to claim him. Another troubling theory was that the boy had been placed in the box by someone who wanted to make sure he would never be found. The box in which he was found, a simple cardboard container, had been carefully chosen as the boy's final resting place. It was clear that someone had gone to great lengths to conceal his identity and erase any trace of who he was. The killer had not just murdered the boy, they had ensured that no one would ever know who he was or where he came from. The idea that someone had gone to such extreme lengths to hide the truth raised the unsettling question: why? The case continued to haunt both investigators and the public. Each new lead or theory seemed to deepen the mystery rather than resolve it. The boy's death had become a symbol of the many children who go missing each year, whose names are never known, and whose deaths remain unacknowledged. The lack of closure in the case left a feeling of unease, as if something dark and unfinished was lingering just beneath the surface. In the 1960s, a breakthrough occurred when a woman named Deborah Hedges came forward with a potential clue. Hedges claimed to have seen a woman and child near the location where the boy's body was found just days before his death. She described the woman as disheveled, with a troubled look, and the child as appearing malnourished. According to Hedges, the woman had been in the company of a man who was also described as acting strangely. However, despite Hedges' statement, investigators were unable to find any solid evidence linking the woman or the man to the crime. Once again, the case stalled, and the lead went nowhere. As the decades went by, the case continued to generate interest. The boy's identity remained a haunting mystery, and new theories about the circumstances of his death continued to surface. Some suggested that the boy had been a victim of a crime syndicate, while others believed he had been part of a failed adoption or kidnapping ring. But again, no concrete evidence ever emerged to confirm any of these theories. The lack of information about the boy's family, coupled with the scarcity of clues, made it nearly impossible to track down the truth. In 1998, a breakthrough came when a team of forensic experts began re-examining the boy's remains. Advances in DNA testing and forensic technology provided new hope that the boy's identity could be uncovered. For the first time, investigators were able to test the boy's hair and skin for DNA traces that might lead to a family or a potential match. The results of these tests, however, provided only limited information, offering no clear path toward identifying the boy or finding the person responsible for his death. Despite the challenges, the boy's case continued to capture the public's imagination, with documentaries, books, and podcasts dedicated to uncovering the mystery. The theories about who killed the boy and why continued to circulate, but no one could provide a definitive answer. The boy's case had become emblematic of the many unsolved mysteries in the world, a reminder that some stories remain unfinished and that some people are forever lost to history. As the years continued to pass, the boy in the box case remained unsolved, and with each new development, the sense of frustration among investigators, the public, and the families of other missing children grew. The absence of a definitive answer continued to linger in the air, a reminder of how some mysteries remain unsolved, no matter how much time passes or how many theories are proposed. The boy's face had become an icon of mystery, his sad, haunting image printed in newspapers and magazines, always surrounded by the chilling question, who was he, and who took his life? The investigation into the boy in the box case remained open, with periodic attempts to revisit the evidence and re-examine old leads. Over the years, new technologies emerged, offering hope that the mystery might finally be unraveled. DNA testing, new forensic methods, and the increased use of genealogical databases brought the possibility of solving the case closer than it had ever been. However, with each new attempt to uncover the truth, investigators faced an even more daunting reality. The longer the case remained unsolved, the more convoluted and difficult it became to piece together. One of the most challenging aspects of the investigation was the fact that the boy's identity remained a mystery. Without knowing who he was, it was nearly impossible to track down potential family members or witnesses who might have known him. The lack of a name meant that the authorities had no starting point. The boy had not been reported missing, and no one had come forward to claim him. Despite the widespread media coverage, there were no credible leads that could link the child to a specific family or person. Theories continued to grow, and new suspects emerged over the years. Some people believed that the boy had been the victim of human trafficking, that he had been taken by someone who had planned to sell him, only to discard him when things went wrong. This theory, while plausible, was never substantiated by any evidence. Others speculated that the boy had been a victim of a failed adoption, left behind after being abandoned by a family that was either unfit to care for him or had abandoned him out of fear or convenience. However, like all the theories before it, the lack of evidence made it difficult to draw any conclusions. As the case continued to garner public interest, amateur sleuths and true crime enthusiasts began to contribute their own theories, some of which raised new possibilities. One such theory involved the boy being a victim of a cult or organized group. The theory suggested that the boy had been taken by a religious group or a criminal syndicate that had performed ritualistic practices on him before leaving him to die. Though compelling, there was no evidence to support this claim, and it was dismissed by investigators as pure speculation. Despite the growing number of theories, the case remained unsolved, and the question of who killed the boy in the box continued to haunt those who were dedicated to solving the mystery. Each theory seemed to offer an explanation, but none could provide the answers that everyone desperately sought. The passage of time had turned the case into a historical mystery, and while it remained a prominent cold case, it was increasingly becoming a subject of discussion, rather than investigation. The impact of the case on the public was significant. The boy in the box became a symbol of loss, of a child who had been forgotten by the very people who were supposed to care for him. His face became a poignant reminder of the many children who disappear each year, their identities lost and their fates unknown. As the years went on, the case served as a catalyst for discussions about child protection, adoption systems, and the dangers faced by children who were abandoned or neglected by their families. It wasn't just the public who were affected by the case. The investigators who worked tirelessly to solve the mystery were equally impacted. Many of the detectives who had worked on the case for years spoke about the emotional toll it took on them. The lack of answers, combined with the haunting image of the boy's face, made it difficult for them to let go of the case. The investigation had become a part of their lives, and even as they moved on to other cases, they carried the weight of the boy's unsolved murder with them. For many of the investigators, it was the one case that they couldn't solve, no matter how much effort they put into it. In 2002, a significant development in the case occurred when a group of forensic experts took another look at the boy's remains. Using modern DNA testing and advanced technology, they re-examined the evidence with fresh eyes. The goal was to extract as much information as possible, including DNA, which could potentially lead to a match in national or international databases. While the hope was that DNA testing would provide a breakthrough, the results were disappointing. The DNA did not match any known family members, and no new suspects emerged from the re-examination. Despite the disappointing results, the renewed interest in the case sparked a fresh wave of interest in solving the mystery. With the advent of genetic genealogy, many believed that the case could finally be solved. In recent years, the use of online DNA databases such as GEDmatch and Ancestry.com had helped solve several high-profile cold cases, including the Golden State Killer case. Could the boy in the box case be next? Investigators hoped that advancements in genetic genealogy would help uncover the boy's identity and ultimately lead to a breakthrough in solving the case. As the years passed, new theories and possibilities continued to surface, and with each new investigation or development, the case seemed to grow more mysterious rather than closer to a resolution. It was as though the boy's tragic death was meant to remain unsolved, a haunting mystery that would continue to baffle and frustrate those who were determined to uncover the truth. The legacy of the boy in the box continues to haunt the public and investigators alike. The child's identity and the circumstances of his death remain one of the most haunting and enduring unsolved mysteries in American criminal history. The case serves as a reminder of the many forgotten children whose lives were cut short before they could be given the chance to live, and of the many mysteries that remain unsolved, despite decades of effort. As the investigation continues, the boy in the box's tragic fate remains a mystery, a symbol of the countless unsolved cases that continue to haunt us. Who was this boy, and why was he abandoned so cruelly? These questions remain unanswered, and as time passes, it becomes increasingly likely that the truth about the boy in the box may never be fully revealed. As the years rolled on and the investigation into the death of the boy in the box remained unsolved, the case continued to haunt not only the investigators but also the public's collective consciousness. The boy's face, with his wide eyes and sad expression, became a symbol of the many cold cases that remained unresolved. The haunting image of the anonymous child, who had no name, no family to claim him, and no justice, stirred something deep within those who learned of his story. His case became emblematic of the many unsolved mysteries that lurk in the shadows of society, cases that remain cold no matter how much time has passed. Over the years, the boy in the box case had become more than just an unsolved murder. It became a representation of a larger issue, the plight of missing and abused children who are never found, their stories never told. The tragedy of this unidentified boy spoke to a much larger societal failure, one in which children's lives are too easily discarded and forgotten. The boy in the box was not just a victim of an unknown killer, he was also a victim of an uncaring society that failed to protect him. His death was a stark reminder of how the vulnerable can be left to suffer without anyone noticing. In the years after the case went cold, the boy's identity continued to be a subject of speculation. Amateur sleuths, true crime enthusiasts, and even private investigators continued to dig into the case, poring over old records, making wild guesses, and coming up with new theories. Each new theory about the boy's identity, while fascinating, only left more questions unanswered. Could he have been the victim of a crime syndicate? Was he kidnapped? Or, tragically, had his own family been responsible for his death? In 2017, a major development in the case came when a genetic genealogy team decided to take a fresh look at the boy's remains. Genetic genealogy, a new method that had recently been used to solve other high-profile cold cases like the Golden State Killer, offered new hope. The team began combing through DNA databases to search for possible relatives of the boy. Could the boy's family still be out there? Would DNA testing finally reveal his identity? The public eagerly followed the progress of the investigation, hoping for a breakthrough that could provide closure. However, the results of the DNA testing were met with mixed reactions. While the boy's DNA was successfully extracted, there were no immediate matches to known family members in the database. The investigators found no living relatives, and the search continued without any conclusive answers. While the case remained open and the possibility of new leads remained, many people began to lose hope that the boy's true identity would ever be uncovered. The fact that the boy had been abandoned and left to die alone in a box with no trace of his origins made the mystery all the more tragic. Who was this child? Why was he discarded like a piece of trash? The boy's death was not just a personal tragedy for him, it was a tragedy for the entire community, for the investigators who had worked tirelessly to solve the case, and for the public who had followed the story. Each year, as the boy's story was retold, the questions surrounding his death only grew more intense. Theories continued to abound, but the lack of answers made it impossible to know for certain what had happened. As the years passed, the case of the boy in the box continued to haunt the public. Every new article, podcast, or book about the case kept the mystery alive. The boy's face became a symbol of the many forgotten children, those who never had the chance to live the lives they deserved, whose stories were lost to time. The case also became a symbol of the many cold cases that remain unsolved, mysteries that continue to vex investigators and haunt the public. The boy in the box had become a tragic icon of unresolved grief. As the case entered the 2020s, new investigators began to re-examine the files, using new technologies, new theories, and a fresh perspective. Could the boy in the box case be solved in the future? Was the truth out there, waiting to be uncovered by a new generation of investigators? Or had the mystery already slipped too far into history, never to be solved? The answers were elusive, but the investigation continued. Despite all the theories and advancements in DNA testing, the boy in the box case has never been solved. As of today, the boy's identity remains a mystery, and his killer has never been brought to justice. The case has become one of America's most enduring cold cases, a symbol of both the helplessness and determination that arises from unsolved mysteries. The tragic death of the boy, who died so young and without anyone to care for him, continues to serve as a reminder of the many children who are lost every year. His case has inspired countless people to become involved in the search for missing children, in the hopes that no child will ever be left forgotten again. The mystery of the boy in the box may never be solved, but his story continues to inspire and engage those who are determined to uncover the truth. The boy in the box case is not just about the child who died so tragically. It is about the many children who continue to suffer in silence, the many children who go missing each year without a trace, and the many mysteries that remain unsolved. In this case, as with so many others, the questions remain unanswered, but the story of the boy in the box will live on in the memories of those who seek justice for the lost and forgotten.